Welcome to the Theo Therapist Podcast, where theologically trained licensed therapists share health and healing conversations. Join our host, Dr. Trice Glenn, for conversations about real-life issues from both theological and therapeutic perspectives.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 5 of the Theo Therapist Podcast. I am so thankful that you have joined us today. We have another great episode that I'm always excited about. I have truly been blessed by the guests that we have this season on the Theo Therapist Podcast. They just keep getting richer and richer and richer in what they're bringing for us for conversation and dialogue. Just a few reminders on the Theo Therapist Podcast. Please like, follow, and share. Subscribe to our YouTube so that you can continue to hear more about the Theo Therapist Podcast and continue to get all of our episodes as soon as they come out. A bit of a disclaimer. These podcasts are not intended to replace therapy. They simply are for informational and entertainment purposes. I strongly encourage all of our listeners, if you don't already have a professional relationship with a therapist or psychiatrist, that you start one, just to help you in your journey toward mental wellness and to maintain that. Today's topic is one you would imagine that is right up my alley. Today's topic is how spiritual coping combats distress. And the guest that I have today, you can't get much better than the creme de la creme here. Dr. Nicole Robertson, PhD, MDiv, LCPC, and NCC. And for all of you who don't know what all those acronyms mean, she knows what she's talking about. She's a doctor. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor. She is a nationally certified counselor. She's even ordained Baptist. Okay, come on through.
Yes.
So she serves as a director and assistant professor of the clinical mental health counseling program at Christian Theological Seminary. And in addition to that, over the last 10 years, she has worked in community mental health agencies, nonprofit agencies, and private practice. So welcome, Dr. Robertson. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Glenn. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here sharing with you and with the folks here that are listening to Theo Therapy Podcast.
You know what? I'm so excited. For those who don't get a chance to listen to the podcast often, typically I get a chance to invite those people who work or who see their vocation at the intersection of theology and therapy, some way that they have found a path forward where they've been dually trained, typically in theology, and dually trained, of course, in mental health. And so we're going to talk about that intersection. But I invite Dr. Robertson, tell us a little bit more about yourself. I kind of gave the quick bullet points, but tell us about kind of your journey and how you got here.
Yes. So thank you so much for that opportunity. So if I would say, I come from the throes of being the youngest of 5 girls born to my parents, living and dwelling in the wonderful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. People say, well, you don't have the accent. I said, I know. Just get me around family and you will hear it. And so embarking from that opportunity, I had a love always for education in school. One of the things that my mother taught me was that education was currency, meaning that if you use that, you could go wherever you wanted to go and do whatever you wanted to do with it. So I utilized that. I was wonderful, had a wonderful experience in my school education and throughout elementary school, high school, and all of those things. Had an interest in science and math. And so that tour took me to an undergraduate experience in math and computer science, where I launched from there to become an IT professional for a period of time. So I worked in that field and industry, worked for a food manufacturing company in the Midwest. And during that season of life in that time frame, even before then, since the call to ministry through my local church in New Orleans, where I was licensed as a minister there and worked in ministry in various capacities. As I moved to the Midwest, and my church there was licensed again in that process, just because of being a female in ministry and being the first in that capacity. So the licensure process and training was another opportunity that I ventured into. And so during that time of working as an associate minister in that context, while still working full time as an IT professional, talking with my pastor and going through training at that point in time, he encouraged me to pursue a Master's of Divinity degree. Just noticing my skills, noticing my call, noticing my gifts, and the ways that I could function and operate in whatever capacity that I was asked to do. He saw something in me that said, you know what, in order for you to really be able to do the work that you want to do within the church context, you'll need some credentials, is what his words were. And so I pursued a MDiv degree while I was working full time and then doing ministry, we might want to call it bivocational opportunities. And so it was during that time, after I pursued and finished my MDiv degree, still working in the IT field, that I got involved even more in pastoral counseling and care within the capacity of my local church. And I found myself very much in the throes of dealing with deep issues of concern around various elements of grief and loss, which pastoral care and counseling is a part of your MDiv degree and training, which we're prepared for, but also understanding some of the deep traumatic harm and hurt that individuals were experiencing that I, within my own capacity, knew I didn't have the capability to be able to serve and help them. So the wonderful gift of referral was what I used in order to refer individuals to mental health counselors or therapists outside of the context of the church. However, as I continued to do that, what I saw was more and more people coming with needs, more and more people dealing with distress, dealing with religious crises, dealing with loss, dealing with fertility issues and concerns, dealing with value and worth and whether or not they were enough, dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety, dealing with all the things that we see on a rise now in our society and in the news or local news where we see things happening, and not feeling myself adequate to be able to assist and help them, and feeling as well as if when I made those referrals, I was, if you will, encouraging those individuals to experience that pain of sharing this intimate situation or tragedy or trauma all over again and having to, in essence, re-traumatize themselves to tell the story for a third time. And so pondering that concern, I really felt a sense of call to see how I could blend both ministry and mental health care together within the church context. And then life situation happened. My mom passed. And I determined at a point where family probably thought I was experiencing a midlife crisis, right? I said, life is too short to continue to do the things that you are comfortable doing. And I'm wondering this sense of call that I would like to pair these two elements of ministry, I believe, call together could be an opportunity for me. And so I sought out different degree programs that maybe had a pastoral care or pastoral counseling focus or a focus where the integration of spirituality along with dealing with mental health issues could be integrated. Found a program, wonderful program in Baltimore, Maryland at Loyola University, Maryland there, and pursued a dual degree as a master's in mental health counseling and then a PhD in counselor education and supervision, with the hopes and goals of completing that degree and being able to work in the capacity of my call in church as an ordained minister. And also, by the way, guess what? I'm licensed to be able to handle your mental health needs and concerns as well within this capacity. And so no longer do I have to refer you out, but I can actually minister to your needs, both spiritually and psychologically, within the context of the church and also in this capacity of having the ability to train others, I can work to train other counselors in the field to be able to do the same type of integrative work. And so that's kind of a little bit of my background, a long story to why I believe it is very important. I sense it as a call to be able to do the work of spiritually integrated counseling and psychotherapy because it is needed within the confines and the context of our churches.
And it is so very important and vital, particularly in the African American church,
Yes.
where a lot of the trust system starts with our, community of faith.
Yes.
And feeling like this is a safe space. And
Mhm.
so if I can connect to my spirituality and recognize the mental health journey that I can be on at the same time,
Mhm.
that integration space does help pave the way and fight the stigma and combat the stigma for so many people to take care of themselves and
Yes.
their mental wellness.
Yes, yes. One of the other things I saw so very often was that the pastor was everything to everyone within the context of
Hmm.
the Black church. And so,
Hmm.
how can we as pastors or as church leaders be all the things and do all the things well?
Right.
Particularly as it comes or as it's related to mental health issues and concerns. And so that in and of itself was key that we needed that function within that capacity, particularly in the Black church. So thank you for that.
And I think you pull something really unique out. In most of these conversations I have with those of us who are dually trained, we started off caring for the needs of others and recognize, hey, I need a little more training. I need
Mhm.
something else. I need another
Yes.
layer
Yes.
of work and education and training that's going to better prepare me to care for those that are obviously a part of my call
Mhm.
because they continue to come to me and come to my space. And so I think it's just a unique pull
Yes.
to those of us that exist in this space simply
Yeah.
because of, how we were created for this world. So
Yes. Yes.
I'm curious, do you have a passion area of ministry or mental health that just tugs at you?
Yeah. So I think my passion area as I think as in the academic world, because my brain is on research right now, teaching 2 classes in that capacity is this, element around how spirituality can be a coping mechanism for individuals that are dealing with psychological distress. That
Hmm.
was the focus of my dissertation research, and it still is very much a pull and a call for me of
Hmm.
really wanting to understand uniquely how individuals can utilize spirituality and or religious practice and their commitment to their faith and faith community as a resource for helping them to manage um, all the things that might burden them, all the stuff. How can my spirituality be used as a coping mechanism? And some might ask, can it? And I would
Right.
answer, yes, it can. So that's one area that pulls on me. Another, I think, because I really see my work that I do as a counselor and as a counselor educator as a calling. Another thing is ensuring that individuals in the field are good at what they do. So
Mm-hmm.
creating not only great ministers, but creating great counselors and therapists as well, because the need is great. We have to be prepared for the individuals who will come and sit in the room with us. And
Yes.
so, how can we be like Jesus, who welcomed and accepted everyone as
Hmm.
they were? And no one left him, if you will, his presence unchanged or healed or not healed. They were healed, right? I know people might
Hmm.
argue different references and say, well, it didn't happen here. But for the most part, those that came to Jesus, he accepted as they were and
Right.
they left changed. And so that's what I want to be able to see in the world when it comes to mental health, that we journey
Hmm.
with individuals on their journey towards healing and that they can be changed as a result of their experience with us. So, um, that's kind of where my passion lies. I can't say that, of course, I'm all for, women in ministry and those things and the like. I am that. And so all the ways in which we are able to ensure that continues. I have a passion for even youth and ways in which we engage intergenerationally as well, because it's important. I might sit in Gen X, but I'm very much millennial because I sit probably right at the cusp of where you cut it off. And so how do I function in those various worlds? So I have passions that kind of set themselves within all those spaces and categories. And how do we relate? How do we communicate? How do we get people encouraged, involved, and remain hopeful?
I love when we have these dialogues and I get to hear the crossroads that I crisscross with so many people at different places. One of the things that my dissertation focused on was spiritual identity development and how that in the midst of trauma, became a coping mechanism, right? And resilience. And so it's just interesting to hear us all kind of come at some of these very core concerns from different angles. And I think that they're relevant. They're very relevant to who is living in today. And how they are trying to make sense of the world, how they're trying to make sense of the crises they find themselves in. And I'm glad that we both are very intentional to not just focus on training the people, caring for the people, but to train those who can be better caregivers for the people.
Yes.
One of the things that I do is try to go in churches and train the leadership on mental health response. And so you train the therapist to be prepared for them when they come. But I want to train the pastors and the lay leaders on, how are we responding, to mental health distress in our communities? Because if we don't have some intentionality behind that, what's going to happen is that we're constantly going to miss the mark of caring for people in the best way that we can.
So true. So true. I think that is key, that pastors and lay leaders and faith communities in general recognize that, and this is my thing, that while there may be some things that look like a spirit or oppression, some things are just the fact that somebody did not take their medication today. And so how do we help people really recognize that and understand that and eliminate some of the stigma behind it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, that leads to our topic for today.
Yes.
Which is, how does spiritual coping combat distress? Each podcast episode, we have a guiding question, and that guiding question just kind of steers, where we're going with this topic. Today's guiding question is, when life feels distressing, how can our spirituality help us to cope? Big question, broad topic, but I definitely think it speaks to where people are.
Yes, it does. When life feels distressing, like it feels right now, in a lot of different ways, whatever that might look like. How can our spirituality help us to cope? The thing that comes to my mind initially, I guess, and first and foremost, is connection. How am I connected? Connected to God, as I understand from my Christian perspective, and connected to community. The old Zulu proverb, if you want to say, or Ubuntu message of I am because we are, is very much centered around connection. So what is my relationship like? One, personally with God. And then what is my relationship like with my community or my neighbor? Hangs right nice and tight on the text in Luke where the Pharisees are asking Jesus, what's the biggest or the greatest commandment that we should be following? And Jesus says, Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your might, all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so when I think about that initially, even from a mental health perspective, what are or who are the people that I'm connected to and I'm able to do life with?
Mm-hmm.
God first. And then who else? What are my relationships like? So that connection, I think, becomes key, because what then is spirituality if it is not then talking about or sharing about my ways in which I'm connected, or I identify God in a way that I feel connected? Creator, how am I connected? Neighbor, how am I connected? That's one way in this time and in this space when we think about, we're not talking about COVID as much as we did in the pandemic, as much as we did 2-3 years ago, right? But it's very much evident. And it's very
Mm-hmm.
much evident in the way in which people have been isolated and or feel isolated or lonely. And so they are dealing with their stressors and their distress in isolation,
Right.
rather than finding ways that they can find out, is anyone else dealing with this? Community, right? Or, God, I'm dealing with this. What is this about? Relationship with God. And so I think first and foremost, and we may expand more, is connection comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
What is my connecting points? What does it look like? Connection. And that is, I haven't even gone within the context of the church. I'm just talking spiritually, your relationship with
Mm-hmm.
God and your relationship in community with others. What does it look
And
like?
they're both so foundational.
Yes.
And I think one of the biggest challenges for us is to recognize when they're not in alignment, when that
Yes.
relationship is not in alignment,
Mm-hmm.
and that sometimes is what's triggering the feeling of distress,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't feel aligned in our relationship with up and with other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things we have to do a self-check on first.
Yes. So true. So true. Because I think when those things are aligned, alignment happens, then communication can happen. And then we can trust folks to say, I think, you've been talking to me about XYZ. I think you might need to talk to a professional about this. So people
Mm-hmm.
very often want scripture in order to go with what we're talking about. It says, in the counsel of many, there's wisdom. And so paraphrasing that in the way that, yes, sometimes it is important, if we're isolated, we don't know that we're disheveled in our
Right.
dress and appearance, right? How many times during the pandemic or during that time, even now, did we find ourselves in yoga pants and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and not recognizing, oh, I can't go outside like this, someone will think, whatever that is. But we go through life disheveled and not knowing, and no one recognizing us or sharing with us, hey, something's going on. Let's talk. When was the last time we talked to God? Right? When was the last time we talked to friends? I have sister friends that go back as far as probably as old as I am. And we do a monthly call to check in on one another. And in that monthly call, one of my friends saw an expression on my face, and a student has told me, yeah, your face, fix your face. And I said, yeah, I understand. And so my friend saw the expression on my face. And after our monthly call, she called me to check in. And she
Mm-hmm.
was like, what's going on? What's happening? But that's because I'm in community and in connection with her and with them. And she, while the others on the phone and call may not have noticed because of our relationship, she was able to check in with me and check me too. But check in with me, and that was important. So, yeah, that's what comes to mind first.
I know. And I think so often now, some people choose isolation when they start to feel overwhelmed. But I think that in some ways is the opposite of where our help and our healing come from.
Yes.
Because when we isolate, so it's one thing, I think, to take a time of solitude. That's a time to regroup, to reground, to regather. But isolation is I'm hiding, I'm escaping from other. And I think
Yes.
it's that escapism that just amplifies the distress, that feeling of aloneness, that feeling of, there is no help. I am helpless to this thing. I'm powerless to it. But
Yeah.
when I think about that spiritual coping, why are you hiding with fig leaves like Adam in the garden? Like, where are you going? Why are you hiding from your help? Talk to your help. It's that open line of communication, not only with greater other, but also with community.
Yeah.
Because, your community is who will pay attention to what's happening with you, like your story.
Yeah.
If your sister friend wasn't paying attention
Yes.
enough to know you, she wouldn't be able to call you and call you out.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that helps us when we're in
Yes.
distress because somebody's paying attention.
Yes. And I think the isolation part is very big. And I wonder at times as well how it might be shame that's keeping us away as well from people. Part of the research and study that I did, and even some of the literature that's out there, when people are experiencing religious crises or mental health crises, they don't want people to know. And so it is both the stigma and the shame and a sense of a lack of faith. And so if I can't pray myself through this, where's my faith? If I can't work on this on my own, people are going to say I lack faith. And so that was surprising to me that individuals would see their mental health issues or concerns for getting out or reaching out as someone saying, yeah, if I say something, someone will say, I lack the faith to be able to pray this away, quote unquote, or I lack the faith to be able to believe God for healing in this area, where reality, I need to be able to communicate what I'm feeling and what I'm expressing without any shame and without any judgment. And I wonder about how spiritually we at points in time sit in judgment and don't allow space for people just to be human.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not only allow for that humanness, but to call for it, right? To call
Yes.
for honesty about where your human spaces are, right? And when you're sitting in your earthiness.
Yeah.
So often we come to our religious communities and we pull it all together. We put on our best clothing, our best mask. We put on our best, bright, positive, smiley faces and aren't authentic to where we are in that moment. And I think that, which is usually led by shame, that we're not where we want to be, I think that keeps us in spaces
Yeah.
of darkness.
Yeah.
And it's that darkness that we have to fight so hard. But once again, isolation can't fight darkness.
Yeah. No.
Only connection can fight darkness.
Only connection. Where 2 or 3 are gathered.
Come on, Baptist preacher.
In my name, I'm there in the midst. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not there in the midst with you, right? Because the two of you together. Or if we want to look at God as Elohim, then, there's 3 already.
Right.
So,
there were 3 before we got here.
we got it, right? Add you, we got 4. So, but I think that's important that we recognize that. Very often people don't, right? That isolation makes you, one, move away and isolate from people, and then the loneliness that sets in as well as a result of that then says, I'm facing this alone. I'm the only one. No one else is experiencing this. Uh, what do I do? Right. So
Mhm.
yeah. I think as well, how can our spirituality help us to cope? What are some of your spiritual or religious practices that have
Oh,
been
definitely.
beneficial? um, and helping you in the past. So I approach the therapeutic experience from a mental health perspective, from a cognitive behavioral therapy approach. And so I'm often wondering, what are the tools that you have in your hand? Like, yes, reference Baptist preacher, Moses, what's in your hand? What do you have? Right. What are the things that you've been using or have used in the past that have been beneficial to you? If we're talking to someone that's dealing with low self esteem and that's their distress because they're trying to compare and compete with everyone else, what are the scriptures saying about you? What does it
Mhm.
say in the book of Psalm 139? It talks about how you're fearfully and wonderfully made. What does it say about um, God perfecting that which God has placed in you? What are some of those, not only scriptures, but what are some of the rituals that are you are accustomed to doing that are hopeful and helpful for you? One example of that is when I find myself in distress, I go to music from my own culture, from my upbringing. That is the thing. So
Mhm.
music in all of its genres. And when I need particular songs or artists to play, I have a little tool in a box or a song list that I play. Could it be that it's the music that works for you? Or, as I've just been sharing, could it be that your affirmations that you need to share in order to encourage your own self esteem or help you with distress comes from music? Where I'm going to go ahead and say it. So I still have Amazon Prime. I'm watching The House of David, and I haven't given up Amazon Prime yet. Y'all pray for my deliverance. It's hard in these streets. And so I'm watching the House of David and watching the House of David through a different lens as they
Mhm.
are showing Saul's experience. And so I'm wanting to understand some of the mental health issues and concerns that Saul was dealing with because possibly I could show it within the context of class. And what did Saul have David do
Mm.
when he was in distress, dealing with auditory and visual hallucinations? He's playing music that
The only
helped
thing
him,
that calmed his spirit.
calmed
Mhm.
his spirit. The distress went away. When David wasn't there, it was chaos. They were doing all the things, all the other things, and nothing seemed to calm him but that. So, could that be a coping mechanism?
Mhm.
Could those scriptures be a coping mechanism? What about fellowship with one another as well as a mechanism that help us to cope spiritually? If we ever needed one another, we need one another now.
Absolutely.
What we face within our society, we can't do that by ourselves. We need one another. And so what does then the prospect of community look like for helping us to cope as well?
Mm.
Those are a couple of three things I think that come off
I
the top of
know.
my head.
One of the things that just connected those for me is there's something about being in a worship space and there's a communal song
Mm-hmm.
that everyone knows and
Mm-hmm.
everyone can sing together,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a hymn or, kind of new contemporary praise and worship song. But it is when all the voices unite and
Mm-hmm.
feel like they are connected in music.
Mm-hmm.
And it is that intersection that by itself has a healing mechanism.
Yes.
because you feel a part of something bigger than you, but it also feels deeply personal to you.
Yes.
And I love that bridge that happens, and and God finds ways to
Yes.
connect us and keep us connected, but at the same
Yes.
time speak to us individually.
Yes. Yes.
I love spaces like that that have healing power that we don't even recognize. We didn't go for that, but that's what manifested. That's what
Yes. Exactly.
emerged
Yes.
in
It
the
said
space.
that, and it's so funny. Yesterday in worship in church, we the pastor was getting up, and the musicians had played a song to transition between communion and the time for the word, and of course they were going on, and we weren't transitioning quite readily, and so the pastor sung, "Oh, how I love Jesus," and I was like, something got stirred. And I was like, wait a minute. And so she said, "Oh, y'all want to sing today?" And I was
Right.
like, that little song
Hmm.
did something to the congregation. And while she thought she was probably, helping us to settle, it
Mm-mm.
kind of took a turn in a minute. So, but eventually settled. But I was just like, when you said that, I was like, yes, this just happened yesterday. And
Absolutely.
how it resonated
It does, and
collectively and individually. Yeah.
that is a coping, I think, it illuminates the fact that we can't do this alone, right?
Yes.
It is those
Yes.
connection spaces that you can't manufacture.
Mm-hmm.
Those are spaces that become, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to kind of become with those spaces. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's super important for us to remember. There are benefits. I get that church folks get on your nerves sometimes. However, there are some benefits
Oh, how
for
we do.
gathering
Oh, how we do.
together.
Yes. Yes.
There are benefits to
Yes.
gathering together, and
Yes.
even in your distress, as
Yes.
someone you can lean on, or if nothing else, someone who can share the burden while you kind of
Yes.
walk through your valley.
Yes. You know, adage that says closed mouth never gets fed. It's like no one knows what you're
Hmm.
experiencing until you find yourself in a place where you can share, right? No one
Absolutely.
knows that you need help until you're able to potentially express, I need help.
Hmm.
So, so yes, those community environments.
And I also want to speak to times of solitude. Once again,
Yeah.
distinguishing solitude from isolation.
Mm-hmm.
I am a person that loves to reconnect with nature.
Mm-hmm.
When the world feels overwhelming, I've got to
Mm-hmm.
get outside and get a breeze to go
Mm-hmm.
across my face. I need to see some water.
Mm-hmm.
I am a person that gets restored from looking at the sunrise. I
Mm-hmm.
sit somewhere still so that I can
Mm-hmm.
watch God welcome a day in. And to
Yes.
me, that just reconnects me to the fact that no matter what these other stressors are, there is
Yes.
something that is consistent as all age and time. The sun will come up and the
Yes.
sun will go down.
Yes.
And on this
Yes.
day, this sun will go down, and we have another opportunity tomorrow. And it is
Yes.
grounding for me.
Yes.
And I think that's
Yes.
spiritual, because if you
Yes.
can connect in that moment, once again, to God that is greater than you, but at the
Yes.
same time, shining uniquely on you,
Yes.
I
Yes.
just believe that helps us cope as well.
Yes. I concur, believe that wholeheartedly. I am a person that loves nature, particularly water, particularly sunrises and sunsets.
Hmm.
I'm like kind of like Color Purple and Seeley and said, I know there no Miss Sophia says, I know there is a God.
Hmm.
When I see the sunrise and then I see all the amber colors in the sunset, that in of
Yes.
itself tells me it will be okay.
Hmm.
It will be okay. I might be crying right now. It may be very stressful right now, but the sun will rise tomorrow.
It
And this
will.
day, if it's stressful again, the sun will set on this day as well. So thank you for sharing that. That is so true. It
Hmm.
resonated with me. Another element that resonates with me in isolation is something that I only could do, or something that maybe the listeners only can do. Water resonates for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it can be the rain, listening to it, watching it.
Hmm.
And it can also be the ocean as the
Absolutely.
waves go out and as the waves come in. And then this is my special thing. It is the sand. Having the ability to put my feet in the sand and cover them says something about being able to be grounded and one with creation in that way. I'll go back to scripture. And in college, we had this theme of we flip a script or, always pulling out scripture. But I think about it, earth being filled with water, right? And the Spirit hovering over that. And then God spoke, and then things began. And so something about the water and something about the sand or the coastline is very much reminding me of God's presence with me always. And so when I can, being landlocked right now,
I
I
get
get
it.
to the water. I think about what that is like. I have a screensaver of when I most recently was near tropical experiences of water and remind myself that when things get out of hand, lead me there. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock. Lead me to the rock that's higher than I. And so maybe for you, for the listeners, your rock is that, a rock, a mountain, right? Maybe for you, your rock is that outside, sitting on a rock, quote unquote. Maybe for you, that rock are the pebbles in the water. And so I think that's important for us to recognize that while community is important, sometimes isolation is good. And not in a way, I shouldn't say isolation.
Solitude.
Solitude is better. It's a good opportunity for us as well. So, yeah.
One of the things that blessed me, and this is very random, on TikTok, I found that there are people who will go and do a sunrise on the beach just to allow others the opportunity every day to see sunrise above the beach. And they will go to different beaches. They'll go to Myrtle Beach, Virginia Beach, you name it. And they will post and just post the camera and allow you to sit and watch the sunrise every day.
I
And
need
can
to
I
follow
tell
them.
you,
I need to follow them.
I follow about 4 of them, but
yes.
But when I can't get there, there's screensavers and you can look at it on YouTube, but it is something about sitting and just watching the water and watching sunrise above the water that it is reconnecting. I can do it sitting at my house and feel like I'm there again. And so I leave that nugget for those of you who follow TikTok. Or if not, I'm sure it's on YouTube too. I'm sure somebody's doing it.
Yes.
But look for those spaces. Look for the ways that you can connect to something that feels grounding for you.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow, this has been such a great conversation. I almost hate to kind of draw it to a close, but I do think it's been rich in having conversations about our spirituality and how that really is the key to coping. With distressing situations, everything from, getting a sense of connectedness to making sure that, we have practices in place that help reground us and recenter us. And then going to scripture and finding ways to connect those dots because, we've got to have some foundation to the ways that we're trying to navigate this world. There's so many stressors. It's good to be intentional.
Yes, it is.
So as we prepare to close, I invite those who are listening to us, drop us a comment, drop us any kind of questions that you have, and I'll be sure to get that information to Dr. Robertson or myself. One of us will make sure we try to reach out to you.
Yes.
But this is just a tip, as I often say about our sessions. This is just a tip of the iceberg. And so if there are things that you want to pursue further, I encourage you to find your own therapist, find someone particularly who's kind of trained in this dual world that we live in, that can kind of help you connect those dots and walk through these journeys together. As we prepare to close, just want to ask, kind of what do you have going on, Dr. Robertson? What's in your wheelhouse? What's coming up soon? Any recent projects or exciting things in the future?
Oh, so I'm very excited about, I have a countdown clock about 60 days from now. I will be able to take a research leave from my role as director and assistant professor. I am looking so forward to that research leave.
Amen for
To take,
sabbaticals.
yes, for a sabbatical. That rest, we didn't talk about a little bit,
We
but
did
that
not.
rest element is also another spiritual coping mechanism. Yes.
Hmm.
So I'm looking forward to an opportunity to rest, but I'm also looking forward to an opportunity to do some research. I'm thinking about research in the realm of looking at Black women who are navigating the academic world towards tenure, and
Mm.
what type of mental health supports and other communal supports are needed within that context. And learning a little bit about their lived experiences is something that I'm very much interested in. As
Very
I
good work.
continue, yes, I really want to know, as I travel and traverse the terrain myself, what is necessary, what is needed for you to have a successful journey. Understanding, and that we've seen individuals, unfortunately, either leave their positions or unfortunately pass away in the academic journey. And I really want to know what it will look like in order to be able to be successful and to be
Mm.
helped and mentored and coached within that capacity. I want to further my research study that I did with my dissertation towards publication, to really talk to mental health practitioners and even pastors about ways in which we could engage spirituality as coping mechanisms for individuals dealing
Hmm.
with psychological distress. And so, as there are ways, I created a survey as a part of my dissertation, talking to the amenability or the openness to therapy. What would individuals within the Black faith community say if their pastor recommended therapy to them? Would they go?
Oof.
And so that's one of the things that I have working on as well. And then just really wanting to focus on how to create great clinicians, counselors to do the work of ministry. As it relates to mental health, I believe that it's both a social justice issue, but also a calling to be able to do this work. And so how do we continue to prepare individuals for this work and to be able to integrate spirituality within that context? To, if nothing else, I'll use some language from one of my supervisors, and now that I've used it 3 times as mine, to be a hope dealer. Now, be
Nice.
a hope dealer. We deal everything else. Can we dispense some hope
Mm.
in this world that seems to be hopeless? Is there a way to be a hope dealer? I think I need to get that on a t-shirt. I'm sure it
Go
is,
ahead.
but those
Hmm.
are some of the ways in which I see myself leaning into the work. So rest first and then do
Hmm.
the work. I'm a big coffee drinker because I have a sign on my desk that says coffee first, then the work. And so, so me rest first and then the work.
Hmm.
So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, blessings to you on the work that's ahead of you, but I
Yes.
really hope you do the rest first.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Tell our folks, how can they find you? How can they find out more information about how to connect with you or follow you?
Yes, so you can connect with me and follow me, of course, through Christian Theological Seminary. My email address there is nrobertson@cts.edu. I'm also connected in the various social media platforms, as Nicole Robertson, I believe, on Facebook, as NZ Robertson on the gram or Instagram, as I think it's Nicole Robertson on Blue Sky, as well as Thread. It's NZ Robertson as well. So all of those ways that you can connect or follow, I'm there, saying a little bit every other day, maybe, not as there as posting as much as I have space or capacity, but those are the places and spaces that you can reach out to me and find me. So, yes.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you for taking the time out to be with us this week. This has been rich. It's been a rich conversation.
Thank you.
I could think of 10 more ways that we could keep talking about this, but we're going to stop it right here.
Yes.
Once again, listeners, thank you so much for listening to the Theo Therapist Podcast. We are on all platforms as well as our video version on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, and share our podcast so that you can stay connected and others can hear the information as well. Take care of yourself, be well, and blessings.
Good night.
Theo Therapist Podcast, real talk at the intersection of theology and therapy. Check out Dr. Glenn's new journal series titled Brain Dump Journals for the Busy, available on Amazon. Visit our websites for more information at thetheotherapist.com or catriceglenn.com.